Hello everyone, this is Freya Crawford, the Mount Washington Medium, here with another episode of You Might Be an Empath If. This is episode 10, titled Who, Where, and How Long. So very briefly, before we get into this episode, if you've not watched episodes 1 through 9, I highly recommend that you do so. This is a series where each episode builds upon the last. So those episodes are up, they're available for you to view. And here in episode 10, this is the last episode where we're doing our deep dive into the characteristics, attributes, and even responses to certain situations that a person with empathic abilities may have. So after this episode, we're going to be looking closely at your personal responses and, if you have empathic abilities, some proper techniques and tools for your toolbox for self-care as an empath. And even we'll get into enhancing your empathic abilities, techniques for that, if you're interested in doing so. Right, so episode 10, you might be an empath if you feel you have to be careful about where you spend your time or who you spend your time with and how much. Okay, so do you notice a difference between interactions with one person versus another? So what we mean here is, do you notice a difference in your own energy after interacting with one person versus another? So perhaps there's a person in your life that is lower vibrational. They tend to always be complaining, or they're in a negative state of mind or otherwise a bad mood. Do you notice a difference in how you feel after interacting with that person as opposed to maybe another person in your life who is always optimistic and generally in a good mood and excited about things? So do you notice a difference in how you feel in your energy between different types of people or groups of people versus another? Do you find certain people's energy or interactions with certain people to be particularly draining? Okay, again, if there's a person that's lower vibrational, do you find interacting with that person very draining? Perhaps you feel exhausted after you spend a certain amount of time with a particular person or group of people. And so therefore, do you avoid that person, or do you make attempts to limit the amount of time you spend interacting with them? Do certain people or do certain locations leave you feeling exhausted or energetically depleted for no logical reason? Okay, so in this aspect, is there a particular person who doesn't have any particularly negative vibration about them, but you feel drained after interacting with them? Or is there a particular location that each time you go there you feel anxious or nauseated and you don't quite understand why? But it happens every time you interact with that person or every time you go to that location. And this is a big one. Have you ever needed to cut someone out of your life because their energy was just too low for you? So I've seen this time and time again in my many years of working with people. Those who have empathic abilities and have had empathic abilities for a large part of their life have at some point needed to cut someone out or allow a relationship to fade away or naturally drop off and out of their life experience because that person was just too low vibrational for the empath. So has this ever happened to you? Do you avoid certain locations because of how they make you feel, or because of how long you need to recharge or recover after being in that location? So, are there certain places that you simply will not go because of the intense physical response your body has to that location, or because of the intense emotional response you have to that location? Perhaps there's a location that the minute you step foot on the property or the minute you step foot in the door, you have anxiety verging on an anxiety attack or a panic attack. Or perhaps you feel so nauseated that you have to leave. And after having that experience so intensely, or having that experience time and time again, you reached a point where now you simply will not go there. And this can be said for certain people or groups of people. Do you have a certain person in your life or group of people in your life that you need a very long time to recharge, to recover after spending a period of time with them? Or you simply avoid them altogether? Do you find yourself planning an exit strategy before certain gatherings or interactions? This goes back to an earlier episode. So, for example, do you insist on driving yourself so that you know that you can leave whenever you're ready to leave? And do you find yourself doing this particularly when you know a certain person, group of people will be present? Or do you find yourself doing this more so when you know it will be in a particular location? Right? Do you flake? Are you a flake? Certainly no judgment here. If you do find yourself flaking, do you recognize a pattern? Do you do this more with a certain person, or you do this more with certain types of events? Do you do this more when it involves a particular location? So do you flake? For an empath, this can sometimes happen when you initially accept an invitation, and then as you learn more information about the events, you learn of the other people invited, you learn of the location, and then you may find yourself beginning to lay the groundwork to decline the invitation or to not show up. Okay, if you said yes to any of these questions, you might be an empath. Thank you so much. This has been episode 10, Who, Where, and How Long. And in our next episode, we're going to be asking the big question. In episode 11, so are you? Are you an empath? Do you have empathic abilities? That'll be available tomorrow at 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time. So if you have been keeping track of your responses to the many, many questions that we've posed in this series, that's wonderful. If you haven't, we've got you covered. We will have this self-assessment sheet ready to go, and it'll be available at this link, and we'll link that down in the description box as well. Here we have all of the various questions and even situational questions that we've posed throughout this series, where you can easily fill in your responses, yes, no, or there's another column if something simply doesn't apply to you. Like for example, questions around pets. If you don't have a pet, that wouldn't apply to you. So you can quickly gather up your responses all in one place, and we'll be able to answer that question. So, are you? Thank you so much. Looking forward to see you in episode 11. Again, that'll be tomorrow at 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you.